Hey, what's up, guys? So this is a topic that I've been wanting to cover for a little while. Um, the topic is the American Communist Party and the occupation of the Republic of the United States, similarities to the Chinese Communist Party and the occupation of the People's Republic of China. So I have an article here pulled up. Equity is a communist tactic that destroys nations. Cultural Revolution survivor Lily Tang Williams. So this is basically a written out interview, but I'm just going to use it at certain times for reference. So I'm going to go over some key tactics here by the Marxist left. So the first thing that I want to address is that how did the Democrat Party, a party that used to believe in free speech, become led towards Marxism so far left? And the answer to that, in my opinion, is one President Barack Obama. So Barack Obama, in my opinion, led the Democrat Party towards Marxism, socialism, communism. Because if you go back to think about it, I'm not sure that they were that far left. I mean, before Obama, the Democrats were far more right than they are now. They have gone very, very, very far left. And I believe that the reason they've done that is because they have an agenda for the American Communist Party to occupy the Republic of the United States, as did the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, occupy the People's Republic of China, and still does to this day. It is a lot easier for a communist force, an outside force, to occupy a republic than it is to overthrow the republic. However, it is basically the same thing. And one of the ways that they do this is that what they do is they take our founding principles and founding laws and they overwrite them with new laws. So the first thing you have to understand about laws is all laws are enforced with force and violence. Government is nothing but force and violence. It does not matter if the supreme law of the land, being our Constitution, says that these new laws are illegal, like infringement on freedom of speech, infringement on the right to bear arms. We could go on and on and on. That doesn't matter. What matters is the force and violence that is behind these laws. So, Politics 101, for those who don't know much about politics, I'll break it down. Politicians are policymakers. Politics is policy making, and police officers are policy enforcers. This is why we see police officers on a daily basis violating their oath to the Constitution, the law of the land, the rights that are supposed to be given to people by their creator and not government. However, police officers do not care about that. They want you to obey, or there will be consequences. So, I'm going to go over some of the tactics that were used by the CCP during the Cultural Revolution in China. So there was a great leap forward, and it would be hyperbolic to say that a lot of our food industry that has been destroyed, a lot of our chickens that were killed by a virus released by gain of function research, undoubtedly, that is a claim that I'm making. I'm sure I'll be proven right on that eventually. A lot of our chickens and turkeys and such were killed by a avian flu, which has been modified by gain of function research to affect mammals and possibly may affect us at 60% mortality rate. Okay, so during the Great Leap Forward, that was a famine that killed 36 million people. So it's hyperbolic to say that we're there. So, those 36 million people died of starvation. But we still see the tactic that the food supply has been attacked. And then we also have the train derailment in Ohio that tainted a lot of that water out there that animals drink. And that's going to affect all of it. And I don't think that we are Nowhere near. Nowhere near the end of what's to come for that. And then there was also struggle sections, which is basically public humiliation of class enemies, oppressor versus oppressed. And what we see happening with that is this narrative of white supremacists. And I understand why the Marxists are using the white supremacist narrative. And that's because, well, the United States has this awful history of racism, which is true. There was slavery. There still is slavery to this day in the Congo, in China, and Asia. The Chinese Communist Party itself uses slave labor. So there was slavery. There was a lot of racists in the 50s that, didn't want black people riding the bus or drinking out of a water fountain or eating in a restaurant. A bunch of nonsense. We can't go back and change that or understand it. I don't. But either way, this narrative of white supremacy is beneficial for the Marxists. They can certainly use this for oppressor and oppressed, and it works on a lot of people. A lot of people that like to be the oppressed, and the oppressed under these Marxist tactics are the ones that the cultural force, the Marxists, they lift these oppressed up, and they use this oppressed as an army to war against those that are enemies of this Marxist regime that seeks power. Which is why we see any person, even black people, called white supremacists if they don't support these Marxist ideologies. Every person, no matter what their political view is, if they oppose this far left Marxist agenda, they're called a white supremacist. So that's what we see here with this oppressor versus oppressed. It's a divide and conquer tactic. Now, there was another article that I read in one of the newspapers that I get from the Epoch Times that I wish I could find that newspaper, and I will eventually. But it detailed the medical tyranny, the top-down authoritarian medical tyranny during the Cultural Revolution in China that doctors basically could not practice if they weren't obedient to the communist authoritarian medical state. All right. All right. So I want to read part of this article here. So the interviewer asked Lily Tang Williams, "Let's start here. Did you believe all this?" Meaning the ideology from the Marxists in China that were using their tactics to divide the people. Did you believe all this ideology? When did you start believing it, or did you not believe? Okay. And her answer was, "Oh, I believed everything. They controlled the press, all the media, all the TVs, and the radios. And me, of course, my parents' generation and my uncle's generation were totally brainwashed, like most of those on the left, I would say. I believed that we needed to eliminate the black classes." Okay, they don't have black people, a lot of black people in China, so not race wise. The black classes. They were the enemies of the people and the enemies of the state. I knew one, a friend that could not join the young pioneers because of their grandparents and had owned land. I had believed it all. How I'm going to know the truth. This is what I heard every day. Political stuff is in your face every day. I was unhappy because I was not the first to join the young pioneers. I was such a good student. Okay, that's not the part that I wanted to read. Okay, because... Okay, sorry, I lost my place here. Okay, so who were the black families? They are the rich farmers, landlord, rightist, bad influence, and counter-revolutionaries. These are subjective terms. You can say this is protection from government. Okay, so what they're saying here is that they divided these classes into black and red. Okay, And I guess you could say we've had that divided the United States under blue and red. I don't know. But basically, what they would do is they would use the news media, as we see, to take any person that was a counter-revolutionary or a person with money, power, and influence, and they would make those people the enemy of the state. And that's what we're seeing. And the reason to do that is because these people would influence these people that were against the takeover of the republic. Well, if they're in the way, then this Marxist agenda couldn't succeed. So they had to get these people out of the way. And the way to do that was to convince the public that these people were their enemies, they were oppressing them, and we have to stop these people. We have to stop these crazy people that believe in today's America, freedom of speech, the right to bear arms, the right to live free. Me personally, as you see here, I'm an anarchist, and a lot of people don't understand anarchy. They think that anarchists want chaos, which is the opposite of what anarchists want. And a lot of people say, oh, well, if we didn't have this political structure that we have in place, then some force would come in and dominate and control and use violence to make sure that we abide by their will. And what I say to you is, that's what's happening. That's what government is. Government is this force that you are afraid of. The force that you are worried about taking over and taking control, we have. We have that force in place right now. So everything that you're worried about is already in place. You have men with guns that will show up to your house that are willing to kill you to be obedient to the state. And as far as like what do anarchists want? Anarchists have a political agenda just like anybody else does. And what our political agenda is, we know, just like the far left Marxists want the United States to be a communist country. They can't overnight make that happen. They etch towards their goal. They etch towards making that happen. And then you have reasonable Democrats that believe that we should have Medicare for all, that, you know, families that are struggling should be helped, and homelessness should be addressed, and we need criminal justice reform and things like this. They know very well that's their political agenda, that's their political goal. They know very well that that can't be implemented overnight. It's not going to be implemented overnight, but they go in that direction. They want to make that part of our daily lives because they think it's the best. And then we have people on the right that basically, don't fool yourself about the right. The right want a Christian theocracy. They want you to be a Christian against your will. And that the right has moved a little bit left, and they've become more reasonable in certain senses, but that's because they had to, because nobody's going to vote for that far right Christian agenda. Because me personally, I'm not a Christian, and I don't want to live like that. And so just like all these other political ideologies, and libertarian to me is the most reasonable because it's very close to anarchists. Anarchists are actually cousins of the Libertarian Party, which is basically what an anarchist agenda is joins in with what the libertarian agenda is, that we want to scale back the power of the government. We want to shrink the power of the government as much as possible and put as much power back into the hands of individuals and take it out of the power of out of the hands of the state. That is our goal, to scale it back. I'm not telling you that I want to take your local city municipalities that pick up your garbage and your water and things like this that you pay taxes for, or your schools that you pay taxes for, and just abolish them overnight. That's not what I'm trying to tell you. What I'm trying to tell you is, if you agree that you want to pay your tax dollars to have these municipalities in place, well, that's a voluntary action. And anarchy is all about voluntarism, about everything being under voluntary means. So if you voluntarily say, I will pay these taxes so that I have these municipalities in place, well, then you can certainly do that. And I think that most people would agree that that's a good way to do things. So, however, the government being in control of our education system is probably the worst thing, one of the worst things happening right now in the United States. Malcolm X said only a fool would let his enemy educate his children. And that's exactly what we have happening. I'm getting a little bit off topic, but this is something that I have to address here. If you ask me, the first thing that needs to happen in the United States is that government needs to be removed from the education system. And China, see if I can pull that article up. Give me 1 second. China, I'm going to pull the article up. China needs to be forbidden to give money to our universities in the United States, because they give a lot of money to our universities in the United States. So if you wondered where this transgender ideology came from, China intended to weaken the United States. All these Marxist influences, where did that come from? Universities. China puts a lot of money into our universities. I'm going to pull that article up. Give me a second. All right, so I got an article here from, let's see. I just had it. From the Inquirer.com. It's titled, Harvard leads U.S. colleges that received $1 billion from China. So this article was written in February of 2020. So Harvard, one of the most prestigious universities in the United States, which a lot of politicians or leaders of our country in other ways, such as tech firms or Wall Street bankers, all these types of people, a lot of these people go to Harvard, and China has given $1 billion. Now, it says right here, about 115 colleges got monetary gifts, contracts, or both from sources in mainland China in the 6.5 years through June, according to a Bloomberg analysis of U.S. government data. The leader of Harvard University, which pulled in $93.7 million, the majority of gifts, the University of Southern California, the University of Pennsylvania, were second and third. China and its citizens are playing a greater role in the U.S. campus life, even as President Donald Trump wages a trade war against the world's second largest economy, the Asian nation's biggest contributor in the period of quarter, 1.8 billion. Okay. All right. Let me go down a little bit more in the article here. China is a threat to the world in a sense because they're building a military faster than anybody, and frankly, the U.S. money. Let me get off that. Okay, so my point being, the education of the people is very, very important. And the first thing we need to do is get the government that we cannot trust out of the education system. And we certainly shouldn't have China putting money into U.S. universities, because that's what's creating all this. That's what's giving all this public influence. In my opinion, I do believe, we always hear that the Pentagon loses trillions of dollars. They just lose, we don't know where those trillions went. And so, in my opinion, where a lot of this money goes is into covert operations, such as state-run media. You know, Obama signed the law that allowed propaganda to be used in the United States against the American people. Bush got caught doing it, so Obama made it legal. And we see that happening. And so if these persons, these propagandists that get on the TV and mislead all of us. Well, you might say, well, why would a person do that? Well, my personal opinion is they're probably getting a lot of money on the back end from this criminal government that has an agenda. And another topic that I want to cover here is that China owns, it says here, according to the USDA, 896.6 million acres or 1.4 million square miles of farmland in the United States. Now, how do we have an enemy of the United States controlling that much land? And who in our government has allowed that to happen other than these far left Marxists? These people that aim to starve us. How do you get a cultural revolution? How do you take a people's republic and turn it into a top-down totalitarian, authoritarian, communist regime? How do you do that? Propaganda, Marxist tactics, change all the laws, overwrite the laws of the land. They're doing that. They're overriding all of our laws. And these policy enforcers, the police, will enforce all those laws. You may have a friend that's a police officer. I do. A friend that I grew up with, my son-in-law, is a police officer. And they may say to you, I hate to arrest you, but I have to. It's my job. They're going to do it. And if you fight back, they will use greater force, even up until the point of murder. They will murder you. You have to obey the state. That's their job. All right, I'm going to go on to the next topic. I know I'm a little bit all over the place, but this is basically a demo. I'm sending this to, I don't know if I've mentioned this already or not. I'm sending this to a friend of mine I'm looking to do a podcast with. So this is just a demo, and it's very difficult to try to cover all these topics and not get off topic when you're doing it by yourself, because I'm just kind of ranting and rambling, going from one topic to the other. In a podcast form, it would be more conversation based, and things tend to stay a little bit better more on topic as far as that goes. And as far as like me having to keep pausing video to look up videos, I could do that while the other person was talking. So there's another topic here that I want to cover, and I do think that it's related. This article is from the Patriot News Network, published on, let's see, when was this article published? I don't see a published date. Okay. Bombshell. Leaked DOJ docs prove FBI infiltrated January 6th. Jimmy Dore covered this on his channel, and I'll link that in my TikTok. You want to go check it out, Madman TV on TikTok. And the reason that I think that this is important is because this goes back to this class enemies, oppressor versus oppressed. Oh, look what these white supremacists did on January 6th. These Trump supporters, these white supremacists, they are the oppressors. They want to have a white supremacist. I don't know what the fuck they think that we want. Which I'm not even a very big Trump supporter. I like him. If he's the best option we got, I'll take him. I think there are people that are better. Okay, so what the article says, and I guess this is linked from Slay News, whoever that is. The FBI had undercover operators posing as Trump supporters who had infiltrated the crowds during the Capitol Hill riot on January 6, 2021. Bombshell leaked documents from the Department of Justice had revealed the explosive docs reveal the FBI was running operations on January 6 and had undercover agents planted months before the events took place. According to the highly sensitive DOJ files, the undercover FBI agents noted that in their reports that the suspects arrested for rioting were in fact innocent. So you may say, well, why would the FBI, which is supposed to be a law enforcement agency, stage this so-called insurrection on January 6th. And the answer to that is that there was domestic terrorism legislation that was written and ready to be passed. So just like the Patriot Act after 9/11 and the NDAA thereafter, these people believe never let a good crisis go to waste. You got to jump on this when you can. So they had the FBI do what they did. They infiltrated and the Capitol and influenced people to riot, and most likely was all government people doing the rioting. But they did all this so they could pass this legislation that gives them the authority to come after who they deem to be domestic terrorists. I'm going to pull that article up. Give me 1 second. All right, unfucking believable. Yep, can't find it. It's fucking hidden. Yeah, so I seen the list before. Google it yourself, or whatever search engine you use. Nope, you will not find it. I promise you. But the things were such as having an American flag, simple things like this. And do you remember that the parents at the school board were deemed domestic terrorists and talking points, and then they walked it back? But just patriotic behavior is what the Department of Homeland Security deems to be domestic terrorism behavior. There was an article that displayed everything that they were calling domestic terrorist behavior, and it was all just normal things. It was basically anyone that stands for the founding principles of the United States they deem to be a threat to them because they are seeking to overthrow the United States. So it is very disappointing and eye-opening that I can look on multiple search engines and not find that information, because it is absolutely there. And it is hidden. Now, the World Economic Forum had an article that I believe they have since removed because I couldn't find it again, saying that they want to restructure the internet so that misinformation couldn't be spread. Well, it almost looks like they're doing that, because I cannot find that article, and I know it's there. I know I've seen it. Anyhow, I believe that this is what's happening. There is an outside force, being partly the World Economic Forum and others involved, that are controlling all our government. And there are people fighting back. There are people standing up for it, against it, I mean to say. And I don't think all hope is lost. I think we have a fighting chance here. But it is a bit scary. Things are going in a bad direction. We do not want the United States to slip into this top-down, slip into it. I believe we're there. And so it's not that we don't want them to slip into it. It's that we need to start to come back out of it. We are there. With the mainstream media being controlled by this opposing force that hates our country, with our universities and education system in entirety being controlled by a force that wants to destroy all semblance of freedom, human individuality. They want to get rid of all of it. They want top-down authoritarian control. And one of the last things I'm going to say here, because I know I've been rambling, nobody's probably listening anyway, but one of the last things I want to say here is you have to remember, and you have to talk to people in your community, because that's where action starts at. Whatever these policies that are passed by these insane criminals in government, remember, it is your local police and your local sheriffs that will, without question, use force and violence up until leading to your death to enforce what they are told to enforce. And that is something that has to be addressed. I think often when we look at political change, we think that we have to look at political change from top down. Not so. Real change comes from bottom up, community based outward. We got to start to change the community that we're in and lead our community towards wanting more freedom, more power back in the hands of the people. And then that will grow and expand. Because the entirety of the United States is so big that you're not going to overnight change all of this craziness that's happening. Anyway. All right, that's going to do it for today. As I've always said to you guys, as I've always said, standing alone, we are a candle in the wind. United, we are a raging inferno. We can make a difference. Stand together. You guys have a good day.